Kevin Hern has a legislative record. Jim Priest has a career history. Which better fits Oklahoma? This article begins a series comparing two very different careers, two very different windows on Oklahoma, and one United States Senate seat. Jim Priest is not yet Kevin Hern's general election opponent. He faces Nkila Jasmine Thomas in the August 25th Democratic runoff. But Priest is worth a closer look now because his background creates an unusually clear contrast with Kevin Hern. This is not simply Republican versus Democrat or conservative versus liberal. It begins with a more basic question. What part of Oklahoma has each man spent his career seeing up close? Kevin Hern did not inherit the career he eventually built. According to his congressional biography, he worked through school, became an aerospace engineer, lost that job after the Challenger disaster, and later entered the McDonald's franchise business. Hern bought his first restaurant in 1997 and later grew his operation to 24 McDonald's restaurants. That gave him real experience with payroll, taxes, regulation, hiring, financing, and investment. Those experiences matter, but they also represent one particular view of the economy, the view from the owner's side of the desk. Jim Priest followed a different path. He practiced law for roughly 35 years in state and federal courts, including substantial work involving employment law and civil rights cases. That exposed him to another side of the economy, because employment law is often where the interests of employers and employees meet and sometimes collide. Priest later moved into nonprofit leadership. For roughly 15 years, he says he led Central Oklahoma organizations including Sunbeam Family Services and Goodwill Industries of Central Oklahoma. That work included childcare, workforce development, training, and helping people find jobs or improve their employment prospects. That career put Priest near a different collection of problems: finding childcare, keeping work, learning new skills, family instability, and helping people regain economic footing after setbacks. Neither background automatically makes someone a better senator, but experience affects which problems a person sees every day, which questions seem urgent, and which consequences become difficult to ignore. Hern's career taught him how Oklahoma looks from business ownership, payroll, taxes, regulation, financing, and investment. Priest spent much of his career looking across that desk. Consider how differently the same economy can look depending on where someone sits. A restaurant owner worries about labor costs, while the employee worries about whether the wage covers rent. An investor watches the return on an investment, while a family watches the grocery bill. Childcare illustrates the same divide. A business owner may see the lack of affordable childcare as a workforce problem because employees cannot reliably come to work. A parent sees the same issue from the other direction: whether there is a safe place for a 3-year-old to spend the day while mom and dad earn the paycheck. A congressional tax writer studies incentives, depreciation schedules, investment, and economic growth. A nonprofit serving struggling families sees what happens when housing, food, childcare, and healthcare no longer fit inside the same household budget. Both are Oklahoma, but they are very different views of Oklahoma. Most Oklahomans do not own 24 restaurants, sit on corporate boards, or manage large investment portfolios. They work, raise families, run small businesses, and eventually ask one simple question at the end of the month: did the paycheck cover the bills? That is an Oklahoma a senator also has to understand. There is one important difference between the two men. Priest can tell voters what his career history taught him. Hern has something more valuable and potentially more revealing for voters. He has a legislative record. Hern has served in Congress since November 2018. He sits on the House Ways and Means Committee and its Health Subcommittee, and he has held significant positions within Republican congressional leadership. That is real experience and real influence. That experience also means Oklahoma voters do not have to speculate about what Kevin Hern might do with political power in Washington. We can look at what he already did. That makes Hern's business background relevant in a different way. Did the policies he supported work as well for an Oklahoma employee as they did for an employer? What did he do about healthcare costs, Medicaid, and rural hospitals? What is his plan for Social Security? What have the trade policies he supports meant for farmers paying for fertilizer, equipment, and replacement parts? And what role does he believe Washington should play in supporting public schools serving low-income children? Priest should not receive a free pass because he worked for nonprofits. A career history is not a legislative record, and good intentions are not the same thing as good policy. If Priest wants to represent Oklahoma in the United States Senate, he should explain what he would actually do. Voters deserve to know his plan for Social Security, what he would change about Medicaid, how he would approach federal spending and the national debt, what he would do about tariffs and agricultural markets, and what federal role he believes should remain in public education. But there remains a fundamental difference in evaluating these two men. Priest's career history tells us where he has been. Hern's legislative record tells us what he did when he had power. This may be the most important contrast between them. Kevin Hern's career is largely a story about succeeding in the American economy. Jim Priest's later career has largely involved people trying to succeed inside that same economy, including people who needed training, childcare, employment help, or another opportunity to get back on their feet. Oklahoma needs both entrepreneurs and employees. It needs people willing to create businesses, invest capital, and take risks. It also needs the people whose work makes those businesses possible. The question is whether Oklahoma's next senator understands both sides of the desk. Kevin Hern has spent more than 7 years telling Oklahoma that his business experience makes him especially qualified to serve in Congress. That is a fair argument, but experience cuts both ways because after more than 7 years in Washington, voters can now ask something they could not ask when Hern first ran. Who benefited from the policies that experience produced? In the next 6 articles, we will examine the major issues likely to shape this Senate race: healthcare, Social Security, public education, rural Oklahoma, taxes, and the money behind our politics. The goal is not to tell voters how to vote. It is to give them enough information to decide which candidates' policies are more closely aligned with the needs of their families, their communities, and Oklahoma's future. Kevin Hern has a legislative record. Jim Priest has a career history. Now Oklahoma voters deserve the facts to judge both. Read more at langdon.substack.com.